Zerg vs Zerg on the new multiplayer balance patch. What I've got for you today is a top level series of StarCraft 2, a best of 5, where in game number 1 we find ourselves on the map Oceanborn. Spawning right here in the top left hand corner, playing with the red Zerg drones, we have the #1 player in the world, and he goes by the name of Serral. Now Serral is definitely the favorite going up against any Terran and against any Protoss. However, in Zerg vs Zerg he looks a lot more mortal. As a matter of fact, just a couple of months ago at Gamers 8, one of the biggest tournaments of 2023, he ended up losing against his opponent 3-0. Now I honestly don't remember the last time Serral lost 3-0 in anything, so the fact that he ended up getting destroyed by his opponent really is a little bit concerning. Either way, spawning right here in the opposite corner from South Korea, we have none other than Solar. Solar, definitely a man who, yeah, you have to worry about when it comes to this particular matchup. Maybe mechanically he's not quite as strong as Serral, but at least in that series at G8 he absolutely out-strategized Serral, so I can imagine that he is feeling pretty comfortable going into this particular series. Although that being said, I can also imagine that Serral is about ready for revenge. Now right from the get-go, we do have a little bit of build order variety here once again. Serral has been opening up with that Extractor start against both Terran as well as Protoss. And apparently we're now also doing it against Zerg. So 15 hatch, 15 overlord, and then into a 15 supply spawning pool as well. One of the downsides of this opener that I've noticed is that it's quite difficult to take your third base. The issue is that your link speed is going to be quite a bit delayed compared to, well, a normal start. So Solar opening up 16 hatch, 18 gas, 17 pool. That means that he's going to be able to get his link speed going here quite a bit before Serral will. And yeah, it almost forces you into a 2-base opener. Although that's something that Serral has been playing against both Terran and Protoss a lot, so maybe that's what he wants to do as well in ZVZ. We'll find out in just a couple of minutes. Anyhow, before this game gets properly underway, let us talk about the new multiplayer balance patch and the changes that it will likely make to this particular matchup. So, broadly speaking, in the mid-game, we have 2 unit compositions that are popular. On the one hand, we have Mutalisks, Zerglings, and Banelings. So that's Mutaling Bane, very popular unit composition, something we see all of the time to really take map control and to harass the opponent. And then usually on the other hand, we have Roaches and Ravagers. Now both of those unit compositions usually transition eventually if the game goes on for long enough. In a ZVZ that rarely happens, but if the game were to go on for long enough, and maybe with these two playing against each other, it's possible, but usually it transitions towards Hydra, Viper, Lurker. So Hydra, Lurker, Viper, it's an amazing unit composition that essentially beats anything. Problem is, of course, that you need like 4 base economy to properly get that going, and oftentimes the games will end before that point. Serral, by the way, skipping Zergling speed here, going straight into 4 queens. Yeah, this is a proper 2-base opener. Okay, now with the second inject coming in, alright, Solar decides to, yeah, check right now. He knows that the queens are gonna be distracted. Serral actually fired up link speed. Is that a fake? I think it's a fake. So you can see the little wiggle in the spawning pool as the opponent scouts, right? So you can see what you're... Yeah, he canceled it. He canceled it and he went for a lair. Okay. So Serral here playing a straight up mind game at the start of this particular series. Very cool. Okay, so I'm already blabbering about other stuff. I think it's gonna be harder to transition towards Mutaling Bane. Roach Ravager was already the more common unit composition. I think Mutaling Bane is gonna be a little bit more difficult to play now because the Hydralisk is easier to get out and to upgrade. And on top of that, the Infestor now spawns with enough energy for a fungal growth. Now, despite all of these mind games, by the way, Solar just got a couple of Zerglings in there, so he still figured out roughly what his opponent is doing, but this is still a bit of a guessing game. He doesn't know that link speed got cancelled. He doesn't really know exactly what he's playing against. And at this point, Serral could be playing a Spire, he could be playing Mutas, he could be playing a Nidus Worm. There's a couple of different options. Lair's going to finish up. We'll find out here in just a moment exactly what his choice is going to be. Okay, so it's going to be Roach speed together with +1 missile for now. Zerglings could have decided to run in, but not really gonna, yeah, happen for now. I was gonna say, yeah, this natural is wide open. I think it's a good choice. You want to know if you're playing against Mutas or Nidus Worms or whatever, right? So none of that here is the case. As a matter of fact, we do have a drone that headed on down towards the 3rd base, and Serral's gonna start working on these overlords. Really? Serral's just playing full mind games here. You love to see it. Okay. So he's opening up 2-base Roach Ravager, I guess. We're sniping queens here, but we've already faked link speed. We've already faked a third base. What else are we going to fake right now? Oh, really? We're just using that one overlord out front to give those queens just a couple additional steps to close the distance towards this blue overlord? Now, theoretically speaking, this is much better for Solar. If he figured out exactly what he's playing against, it's important right now that he stops droning. He's making the same units right here as Serral, so he's making just Roaches and Ravagers. He's gone for a quick +1 missile upgrade. Roach speed is going to finish up as well in about a minute or so from now. I mean, that one is of course quicker here for Serral because of that lair timing. The queens are sent across the map too. We're making a little bit of a creep highway to allow those reinforcements to get across a little bit easier. Okay, anyways. Now Solar sees what he's playing against, but does he have enough army? Because at this point, the supply count here is certainly not deceiving us. Solar invested in that third base, he invested in more drones, he should end up with more army here as this game continues, but if it's up to Serral, he wants to end this game here in the next couple of minutes. Nice snap right there on the queen right away. Sorry, there's a fight going on, but I love the visuals right here on Oceanborn. Corrosive bottles mostly just set up in such a way that we are trying to force the opponent to micro and move those units around. The queens right now, though, after defending the choke point, after now also sniping overlords, they've now been tasked with transfusing Ravagers here primarily, and a couple of Roaches right now also getting some help. Defender's advantage here, though, significant, of course, for Solar. It's gonna be hard for him to, for Serral that is, to get units across the map. Supply count right now, though, still heavily in favor right here of the Finnish Zerg. Drones have been falling, so 6 workers are down right now. If Solar manages to stabilize, I think I still prefer this position for him. It's just that the supply count is looking much better right here for Serral. Those queens actually putting in a lot of work. If those queens did not snipe those overlords, this would have been so much better here for Solar. Okay, one Ravager right there, a little overly exposed. Queens over here now also end up going down. God, they die in slow motion while floating to the surface. Ay, ay, ay. Drones pulled away from their mineral lines too. This is so close. +2, by the way, has been fired up during all of this. There was a third hatchery produced, but I think that third hatch is really just in case he really needs it. I don't think Serral's done yet. Yeah, Solar's looking around right now. He wants to see what's happening. He's also been making non-stop army for a while. And that Roach Ravager micro right here from Serral has been ever so slightly better. So in that series at G8, I think what happened is Serral just played a little bit too passively. I can imagine that that series has been haunting him at least a little bit. And he's probably been coming up with strategies that he would execute against Solar next time they played against one another. And being the aggressor, even though it may be a little out of his comfort zone, it does sound like the right move to me. There it is. Game number 1 goes in favor of Serral. Solaris is going to be game number 2. Okay, so the Hydralisk, easier to upgrade, bit easier to counter Mutas with right now, especially that initial influx of Mutas. Secondly, the Infestor now, it spawns with enough energy for a fungal growth, meaning that you don't just have to awkwardly sit around with your Infestor, waiting for the Mutas to fly in and hoping that you've got enough energy, right? So countering that initial group of Mutas, I think, is going to be easier. Brute Lords are buffed, but honestly, they're no good in this matchup. Dropper Lords are more microable, but I also don't think Dropper Lords are going to be all too, good in this particular matchup. The Ultra is a little bit cheaper, but no good in this matchup. Obviously, the Lurker is now a little bit more difficult to reposition, so the Adaptive Talents upgrade is not quite as powerful as it once used to be. That might be relevant, but a lot of games never require Lurkers, right? Lurkers really are a late game unit, and a lot of the games of ZVZ end before that phase, but if we do get there, it's certainly something to keep in mind. Banelings, of course, also have had a 5 HP reduction. So if you're playing Mutaling Bane and you're playing with the Speed Bane upgrade, you're not going to be able to make use of those Banelings nearly as easily. So I think overall Mutaling Bane is just going to be a less powerful unit composition. It's certainly still going to be viable though, but it's gonna it's gonna be a little bit worse overall. I guess the air armor upgrade is a little bit cheaper now. So if it's like a Muta versus Muta war, I mean, then it's basically irrelevant, but yeah, there are definitely moments where Mutas can still shine. I think that's about it, right? So the Hydra change, Infestor change, Dropper Lore change, Ultra change, Baneling, air upgrades, and the Lurker. Yeah, I think that sums it up. I think that's everything. Anyhow, overall, this matchup should still look broadly the same, but I can imagine we're gonna see more Roach Ravager play than in the past. Hatchery into a gas geyser, into a spawning pool here, this time around from Serral. I was wondering if maybe he decided to go for the 15 hatch opener in the previous game because he was a little bit concerned about his opponent going for like early game aggression. Then again, Serral's not really somebody who loses a lot against early game cheeses. Even like a full-on 12 pool with drone rushes and all that, he tends to counter with hatch gas pool openers. But there's no denying that against that particular style, you do want to go for a faster spawning pool rather than a later one. So yeah, if you're a Zerg player on the ladder, I can imagine that the 15 hatch opener is a little bit more comfortable, but this is both players opening up identically, right? So very normal game here from both of them. We're gonna harass, put a little bit of pressure onto that third base. There's the Baneling nest coming up as well here for the Finnish Zerg. We see the same thing on the other side of the map. So I think Solar made the decision to go for a quick Evo chamber in the previous game, primarily based off of the fact that he did not see his opponent taking a third. So he didn't see the third base, and he was like, okay, I guess I'll go for a faster Evo chamber then, rather than a Baneling nest, which obviously can be a little bit risky too, because seeing a 2-base opener does not necessarily mean that it's going to be not Zerglings, right? There's always a chance that they're just saving up Zerglings, and then suddenly you have to deal with an awful lot of army. And if you don't have Banelings against that, it does become very, very difficult. Yeah, this can be a pretty coin-flippy matchup, right? There's a lot of decisions that you have to make that make it all, yeah, not as reliable. Anyways, a couple of Banelings hiding off to the top. Serral's been making non-stop army here for a while already. He's droning behind it. Solar right now with the worker lead. So as long as he defends here with minimal losses, he should be okay. And he's got all of the tools at his disposal. These Banelings, though, I love that. Yeah, these Banelings, they are the real reason why why all of this army is moving across. Okay, apparently we've settled on just dealing a bit of damage. Got microing Ling Bane in the speed up circle with probably like 150 ping. Sounds pretty horrible, guys. Yeah, we can soften up a lot of these units, but unless the links can get in, it's gonna be hard to get much done. So obviously when we're playing Korea versus Europe, generally we play on the NA server, so the North American region, which means that both players have like 150 to 180 ping or so. And then when you're, you know, fighting and microing the fastest units in the game in a speed up circle, I mean, it's gotta be so difficult. It is very, very easy to accidentally mess up and lose the game. Anyways. Looks like we're gonna be able to force at least one council right there. Maybe that's one of the reasons, actually, why 2-base openers may be more viable in this matchup right now. When you're playing cross-server, it is something to keep in mind. I know some people find it annoying whenever I talk about ping. But these guys definitely take any strategy in mind, right? Like, they will think about everything as much as they can. And when you know that the opponent has got a ping advantage, it is something when you're microing fast-paced units that you have to account for. Usually, actually, they alternate to be even more specific about it. Usually, with a best-of-5 series like this, they will alternate between NA West and NA Central. Because otherwise, one player would have, you know, the advantage most of the time. Anyway, Serral did make a lot of units here, but he's now transitioning towards a lair together with more and more upgrades. I don't think he really wants to be all too aggressive here for now. Mostly just faking a +1 armor attack, it seems. And yeah, for now, none of that really the case. Or I don't know exactly what he was faking here. I'm assuming that Solar did see the timing of that evolution chamber, so there's a good chance that... No, he actually hasn't spotted it. Okay. Normally... He did see the Roach Warren hiding in the back, yeah. So maybe Serral originally wanted to go for an all-out attack, but then he realized, okay, my opponent has scouted me, I'm not going to bother with it anymore. And therefore, I can maybe fake my opponent into making more defenses than he needs. Now, Solar has been making defenses for a long time, and now he's using his defensive units on the offense instead. We're talking 57 workers right now for Serral versus 39 from Solar. I actually think Solar may just have the numbers here. Solar's been making non-stop army for quite a while. This third base is super dead, no? There's a couple of spine crawlers coming up. Yeah, when you think you've successfully mind-gamed your opponent, but it turns out your mind game got mind-gamed. Solar evens up the score. Yeah, so Solar essentially just never really made any drones anymore. After the Ling Bane aggression, he made like 1 round of workers. And maybe he originally intended on using these units to counter that quick Roach Warren play that he scouted from his opponent. And then he realized, you know what? I've already gone down the unit train here for a little bit too long. If I start droning right now, I will be economically behind, so I may as well put all of my eggs in one basket. He doesn't have any Evo chamber upgrades, he doesn't have a lair or anything. This turned into a complete all-in, but it ended up working out brilliantly. Heart Lit is gonna be game number 3. Okay, both players opening up standard, so hatchery first, into a gas geyser, and now a spawning pool as well here, momentarily. There we go. I thought for a moment that maybe the 15 hatch opener would be the go-to as well in this particular matchup for Serral, but apparently not quite. So next time you see him going for a 15 hatch opener, at least alarm bells would go off in my head if I was his opponent immediately, because that does sound like it would make it quite obvious that he's got something cheeky in mind, right? If he's playing a normal game, sure. We can play Roach Ravager and just a normal matchup, but if he's suddenly opening up 15 hatch, you gotta be a little bit more on your toes. I mean, game number 1 was incredibly close, right? If Solar ended up scouting that ever so slightly earlier, or if he ended up moving his overlords out of the way ever so slightly quicker, I think it would have looked entirely different. I obviously have not paid attention to the exact amount of minerals that both of these players had at the start of this series, but there's no denying that Solar maybe he hit like a supply block for like 3 seconds, right? Honestly, those differences do add up over the course of a game, and game number 1 was really on a razor's edge there the entire time, so. Game number 2, honestly more significant, yeah. Okay, so both players should be properly warmed up now. I'm assuming we're gonna go for 3rd hatcheries on both sides of the map. Apparently on Heartlet, we will be expending in the triangular position. Fair enough. Couple of Lings here. They're gonna start harassing this base, and in the meantime on the other side, we have the same thing happening, and these Lings in blue will be running on over. These Lings in red will also be running on over. So the second group of Zerglings, it gets produced ever so slightly later than the first group, mostly because, well, that means you can make 1 extra drone for like 10 seconds more, and that means you end up with like 8 minerals extra. Doesn't sound significant, but again, little things add up in a game of StarCraft 2. Okay, Baneling Nest right now on the back of this. You can play an orderly game for a long time, and then you get hit in the face by a Baneling. The story of my ladder games. That's honestly what happens in literally every single one of my ZVZs. I feel like I'm playing so well macro-wise, and then you don't pay attention for like half a second and everything dies. ZVZ, a knife fight in a phone booth. The easiest description of it. It just feels so tricky, man. It is such a difficult matchup to play. Most players, so I'm at a weird spot right now on the ladder too. So currently at like high masters, low grandmasters, the amount of Zerg players is very low. So I think it's about 40% Terran, 40% Protoss, and 20% Zerg. Meaning that most of the Zergs that I face also don't play a lot of ZVZ. And if you don't play a matchup a lot, usually what players resort to, that I've noticed over the years, is just straight up cheese. So most of the guys that I play on the ladder will cheese every single ZVZ they play, because it can be over in like 4 minutes, right? Then they can go back to playing Zerg versus Terran and Zerg versus Protoss. So in a weird way, when like there's already a low Zerg population on the ladder in your specific MMR range, it makes the game more cheesy, which is really kind of funny. My ZVZ practice is not very good. No. Anyways, we've got ourselves a big round of roaches coming up right here for Serral. He's made 40 drones. We're gonna go for a second gas geyser here, but previously we would do these attacks with +1 armor. So it was very common to make +1 armor and then put all of your eggs in one basket and go for a big attack. This is Serral just putting down a Roach Warren, making a ton of units, and now eventually going for an Evo chamber. That's interesting. This reminds me of a less refined version of, yeah, the Roach attacks. Now, does he have enough? I mean, these roaches, they don't mess around. There's 6 roaches about to spawn right here for Solar. That Baneling right there was not bad whatsoever. Oh, Queen over here gets surrounded too. Okay, Serral once again coming out swinging here. This feels like such an uncharacteristic attack, right? In the meantime, he's been droning behind this for quite a while. So we're talking, yeah, 56 workers right now, 59. So when all of this is settled, I think Serral will find himself with a overwhelming advantage. Now, what exactly does Solar have at this point over Serral? Not a whole lot. He didn't start up an upgrade yet. He doesn't have a lair done or anything along those lines. At this point, it's one of those awkward scenarios where you can't really leave the game yet because you still have a decent enough economy. But you also know that your opponent is doing the exact same thing that you are. So you're playing Roaches and Ravagers, but with more upgrades, more economy, and therefore more army. So like in all the pillars of the game, your opponent is ahead, and when you're playing the same units, it becomes very awkward to try and come back. Now, there are ways to come back in this matchup. Generally speaking, it requires a misplay from the opponent. So say you can hide a couple of Banelings over here and try to walk those into that mineral line, right? Maybe you can catch your opponent off guard with a sudden group of Mutas or something like that. But I think what Solar here is doing makes a lot of sense. He has decided that his best shot at this point is just to go for a counter all-in. Yeah, just keep making army and hope that your opponent is not gonna have enough stuff. Now, it looks like Solar has a red... Or, sorry, Serral has red Solar like a book. Those bottles are pretty nice, I suppose, but the numbers are just not there. Nah, this surface area right here with that concave as well is absolutely massive. GG is called. Serral wins game number 3. No Radusat Station, guys. I've only seen, like, 2 games or so on Radusat Station so far. That map is really cool. But I guess that's one of the downsides of having 9 maps in the StarCraft 2 map pool, right? We'll probably see it more moving forward, but there's no denying that for now, Radusat Station is not very popular. Every time I load up a new map, I'm like excited for it. But no, we find ourselves on Site Delta. Fair enough. Now, by the way, if you enjoy watching these casts, do make sure you hit the subscribe button down below this video. I try to upload new videos basically every single day. Usually 6 days a week. I try to upload, at least that's my goal. It doesn't always work out, but I try to upload Monday through Saturday. Besides this channel, I also have a second channel that's youtube.com/morelowko, which is where I post completed games that I have streamed on Twitch. Link to that is also down below in the description of this one. Highly recommend you go ahead and check it out. I'm definitely not biased whatsoever. Hatchery first, once again, for both players. Into a gas, into a bunch of queens. Okay. There's the link speed coming up. 2 drones pulled out. Serral a little bit later when it comes to this particular upgrade. He's gonna pull 1 drone out. Look at the deviation, guys. Somebody bring out your Excel spreadsheets. We gotta plot the exact differences right here between these openers. Okay, so obviously this means that Solar will have less gas as this game progresses, but he will, of course, have a faster link speed. Those small differences really don't make that big of a difference in this matchup usually. Because ultimately, as long as your opponent has the link speed upgrade done by the time that your attack hits, it shouldn't really matter that much. So there's about maybe a 10-second advantage or so right there for Solar. Serral's decided to expand vertically right here on Site Delta, whereas Solar has taken the triangle position. Interesting, okay. Baneling Nest right now on the back of this. Something that Solar can produce right about right now too. Because he's got the gas for it. Normally this would be the moment where you do take it. This can be very risky. Skipping the Baneling Nest, especially when your, well, opponent is on match point. Not usually a very good idea. He's making non-stop Zerglings at this point though. Ah, instant Roach Warren instead. So that's 3 minutes and 20 seconds right there on the Roach Warren. So he's skipping the Baneling Nest. I've been doing a lot of StarCraft 2 coaching over the years. Skipping the Baneling Nest is the dream of every Diamond League Zerg, dude. I swear every Diamond League Zerg that I've ever coached. They wish there was a proper way to skip the Baneling Nest. Lingbane Micro, nobody really seems to like it that much. It's just that this is very risky, right? So it can work out. It's just that if Serral decided to put all of his eggs in one basket and go for an all-out attack on the other side of the map, which he may just very well be doing, you need to have phenomenal micro in order to pull it off. Now, roaches are coming, and it is doable when you first attack with a group of lings like that, but I find it very risky. Did we have Banelings coming in? Oh yeah, 2 Banelings just walked towards the other side of the map. Sorry, I backed up like 15 seconds in the replay. So while that aggression's going on the other side of the map, 2 Banelings, feeling adventurous. Kill 2 drones. That's one of those situations where not microing your workers is actually superior to microing your units. I think Solar may have had a glimpse of it and he decided, you know what, I am not going to micro against that. What he did do, though, is buy enough time right here for his roaches to come out, which ultimately will help out quite a bit. Yeah, you still have to be careful. The problem with roaches, right, is that they are obviously good at countering Zerglings when there are enough of them. But if you have like 3 roaches and they all sort of just get surrounded, Zerglings destroy them. It seems that like the magic number of roaches is like 6 or 7. At that point, they can kind of like have each other's back. They can like, you know, make sure that the dudes in the center don't have nearly as much surface area. But any less roaches than that, Zerglings just destroy them. Obviously, the missile upgrade is massive in this matchup. So with the +1 missile upgrade, you can kill a Zergling with roaches with 2 attacks rather than 3, which adds up very quickly. Now, Serral's just going full Ling Bane. Okay, Solar, let's see your crisis management. I don't think I like this all too much, to be honest, for Serral. Yeah, it's a good attempt. He's figured out that his opponent decided to skip the Baneling nest. But are we gonna run Banelings into roaches? That can work. It's just that it's not in this case. No. That was very expensive, and there's a good chance that Solar is going to retaliate with a counterattack here eventually, although it's difficult to make that decision too, right? And the other downside of having roaches is that you can't really use them offensively until you get roach speed done. I mean, you can, of course, but it does feel a little bit risky right now. It's not like you can just march across the map and say, yo, Serral, I've got all these units for you, because if he starts marching right now and Serral gets a glimpse of it, which obviously he would with any of these overlords, then suddenly the Lings would be all over the natural expansion. There would be a full-on counterattack. Serral could evacuate the third and just make a bunch of spines over here. Those roaches take a long time to march across, so you're kind of in a defensive posture right now, which I don't really like all too much. Apparently, Serral also doesn't like it all too much. He's just making non-stop army here. No lair from him. No Roach Warren. No nothing. Solar has been looking around the map as well, and he's figured out that his opponent doesn't have a whole lot. Here's another wave of Zerglings and Banelings, but I've got a feeling that this one will go even worse than the previous. I mean, there's a lot of Banelings available, I guess. Maybe? There's a chance. The numbers are going down right now. The Queen's here, together with the Roaches, trying to body block as many of these Banes as possible, and only one of them remains. One of them is not enough to one-shot those drones. And once again, what looked like a pretty good fight there initially for Serral turns out to be quite a disaster. Right now, the supply count is like an additional 10 supply or so in favor of Solar, who's just, yeah, redroning slowly but surely. Curious how he's gonna move across the map, though, because, yeah, he's got an advantage here, but is there really something he can do about it? Serral's still making non-stop army. My god. He's just making links. This kind of reminds me a little bit of those Maru games I've casted over the last couple of days. Where, like, Maru is considered to be the best late-game Terran in the world, but he just refuses to play late-game Terran for... I don't know why. It makes no sense. Getting a similar vibe right here from Serral. Best macro Zerg, I would say. And he's like, no, I gotta be aggressive. Ah, well, that's one way to obtain the victory. Solar never moved across the map. He never needed to go. And that takes us to the final game in this best-of-5 series, which will take place on the map Hecate. Both players have been trying to outsmart each other. Both players have brought out the sledgehammer attack, and overall, they seem to be pretty evenly matched. Just like I expected, though, not a lot of macro games. Just in general, neither player really seems to want to play a long, drawn-out match. There's just so many things that can go wrong, you know? It's like building one of those houses of cards, and the macro game is like the 7th layer. It's like, yeah, technically speaking, it's awesome. But there are so many things that can go wrong in the process that it can be just simply, not just like physically easier, but also just mentally easier to just, me make Zergling, me go smash. You know, to just go full caveman Zerg style. Because there's a lot of delicate decisions you have to make if you do want to play a macro game. And sometimes it can almost be like a bit of a gentleman's agreement where both players are just like, okay, you don't attack me? Okay, I won't attack you either. Deal. And then finally we get like a macro game of ZVZ. Caveman style definitely can be a little bit more straightforward. Alright, so you can look at this game from the production tab. It is basically identical. You can look at the resource count at the bottom. Pretty much an identical game so far. Overlord positions are a little bit different, I guess. But that's about it. Okay, now who's gonna make the first big deviation? Link speed done right now for both. Sad little Zergling right there. That was first blood. First blood. I need to have a button for that.
First blood.
Oh, that's the wrong button.
First blood.
That sounds a little bit cooler.
Although I could do the rest of my cast like this.
I'm not going to though, because that would be very annoying. Anyways, a Roach Warren coming up right now for Serral. I can play multiple characters with my own voice. Yeah.
Roach Warren coming up for Serral.
And in the meantime, Roach is also...
No, okay, no, I'm done. Serral tried to, or sorry, Solar right here tried to hide a couple of lings inside of the main base of the opponent. Wanted to go for some Banelings there. Not quite getting it done. There's the Evolution Chamber upgrade coming up here for Serral. We don't quite have one yet, though, on the other side of the map. Did Serral just change color, by the way? Am I mistaken? I feel like Serral was playing red previously, but I might be completely delusional. They're both scouting out each other's third bases, so it's important to keep tabs of the amount of drones that your opponent has. So that's one little mind game that's not quite as easy to address as a commentator, but basically these guys are scouting with Zerglings all of the time. And they're checking out the worker count at the opponent's third base. However, you can obviously transfer drones from the main to the natural, from the natural to the third, to make it look like you have more drones than you actually do. Now that is a small economical hit, because you obviously have those drones not mining for a little while, but there's a lot of small little mind games that are going on all the time. So you see these constant Zerg scouts here. Serral is notorious for being insanely good with scouting in all matchups. But sometimes that can bite him in the butt a little bit because the opponent decides to, yeah, play a cheeky one on him, right? They know the reaction that Serral will have to the scouted information, and then, well, Serral can get punished for that. Ooh, a Spire. Okay, both players actually finished up their lair right now, and both of them go for a Spire. Okay. So after not seeing any Mutas at all in this series, we're gonna go for Mutas right now. Now I say that, both of them have transitioned towards +1 missile. And okay, we see a Roach speed as well on both sides of the map. There's an Overseer Scout coming in right now here for Solar. He wants to see that Spire. And I can imagine that Serral wants to do a similar thing too. So this will likely be, there it is. This will likely be just like one group of Mutas and then a transition back towards Roaches. Although it can be a little bit tricky though, because obviously when you're both playing Mutas, then the guy usually with more Mutas will end up winning. Overseer, by the way, did somehow, some way sneak in right here from Solar. Solar really needs to move it ever so slightly to the right. Yep. And there you will see that there is a small little structure building over here, and that can only ever be the Spire. Now, does this make any changes here for the Red Zerg? Serral has also now figured out what the opponent is going for, so both of them know exactly what's happening. A lot more gas saved up right here for Solar. One option here is to go Corruptors. Yeah, okay. Okay, so Serral is going Roach Corruptor, where in the other side of the map we have Solar going for Mutas. The idea behind the Corruptor is that you can counter Mutas cost efficiently. The problem, however, with Corruptors is that they suck against everything that's not Mutas. I guess the Overlords can also be killed, but that's really about it. Serral has got a lot of Roaches though. We're talking 33 versus 14, so he's gonna push across the map right now. And he's hoping that his Corruptors can occupy those Mutas of the opponent, at which point the Roaches can obviously destroy everything else. Why is he not going? I think he should go. He doesn't quite have enough Corruptors yet, I guess. Yeah, 4th hatchery here done. Solar is just going into mass Muta production right now. Okay, he's looking around for any sort of overlords here. He does not want to get scouted. So he made this look like it was going to be a small group of Mutas into, yeah, mass Roach production. But I think he's doubling down. The weird part is, though, that Serral has already got his Spire as well. So he can just also double down, too, on more Corruptor play. So we're soon going to have, like, 11 Corruptors against, like, 17 Mutas or so. Which I think is actually better for the Corruptor player than the Muta player. It's just that the Mutas, obviously, when they do win that fight, they usually win it overwhelmingly, and then all of those Overlords are going to be in trouble. And then the Roach player can't really move across the map anymore. So this is all... It's a delicate dance. Okay. We're clumping up the units to try and mitigate as much of that damage output as possible to make it difficult for the opponent to target fire. We need a little bit more. That was not good. Nah, Serral flying through that was not optimal. But in the end, there's just ultimately enough Corruptors here to push back all of these Mutas. Now, in the meantime, Serral has decided to go across the map as well with the Roaches. Trying to target fire Mutas as much as possible. I'll keep the units tab open right there in the top left-hand corner instead. Roaches right now, okay, trying their very best. Link counterattack. This Link counterattack is completely catching Serral off guard. He does not have any units available here to deal with this. In the meantime, though, the Roaches are pushing forward. Where are the Corruptors? The Corruptors apparently distracted for a little while. Yeah, they need to be micro to try and keep those Mutalisks at bay, but the Roaches here are losing. In the meantime, yeah, the Zerglings here are going to town. Queens have been pulled to the front, forced to use their transfusions. Roaches are going to be popping out of their cocoons very soon. Serral seems to be winning the air war somewhat. No, he's not actually. More Mutas have popped out of their cocoons, but now the Roaches have won the ground war, and this can really change the tide of this game very quickly. Despite that Zergling counterattack and it, well, catching the Zerg player in blue off guard, he ended up not losing that many workers, although I say that, 19 Mutas with +1 took care of that Roach group very quickly. So I thought the Lings were gonna deal more damage on the other side of the map when Serral did not scout them, and I thought Serral was gonna kill more drones right here with the Roaches, but neither of those two things really happened, which means that the game is once again pretty even. What is the Muta versus Corruptor count currently at? 20 versus 12. That's still just fine here for Serral. But I think the game is actually very even now. Yeah. Worker-wise, neither player really significantly ahead. We have +1 melee coming up here for Solar. The Corruptor mind game. Yep, and this is what's problems. This is what a problem you have, right? When you're playing against Mutas. You don't have to worry about Corruptors accidentally killing your drones, right? You don't pay attention to the Mutas, though. You lose sight of them for just a moment, or maybe you're just not paying very close attention, and you lose 12 drones. I think the game was even about 30 seconds ago when I said it. Right now, it's a small advantage right here for our South Korean Zerg. Okay. The Queens here, trying their very best to get something done. One option, I guess, that Serral does have is to go into a fungal growth. I think one fungal here would be amazing for him, but obviously that's an infestation pit you have to purchase, and then you also have to actually get the infestor going. It's all a little expensive, and he needs to spend as much of his income right now on just sheer units. Here come the Mutas once again. You blink twice, and they will kill a mineral line. Roaches here, together with the Queens, absolutely critical. Oh, Mutas apparently now feeling confident as well that they can fight all of these Corruptors. Queens at this point have fallen, though. 4 drones did already go down as well to those Mutas earlier. Map control right now in favor of Solar. Solar going into the +2 here as well. That's going to be a really nice upgrade for him to have. Corruptors, not on a tech move there. I think there might just be enough Mutas to start fighting this, to be honest. 28 versus 17, 30. Those Roaches forcing those Mutas to back up for just a moment. Ultimately, though, Solar just has more economy. He has more units. And do I taste a little bit of frustration here? Serral decides to tap out, despite the fact that he still has 4 bases going. At this point, I think he would need something like a Lucky Fungal Growth, or maybe secretly tech up towards a Hive and get a Viper going. It would require his opponent to make a mistake, but this is now the 3rd time in a row that Solar wins over Serral in a tournament series.